Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 183. We're heading back down to the Virgin Islands tonight, folks, and we have an article from the St. John source. And this article is throwing around some heavy words, some big words, words like RICO. So is Denise George going to take this case to the next level and really go after these clowns? Because if she's going to do that, and she's going to start evoking words like RICO and using power like RICO to bring in the associates of Jeffrey Epstein, not one of these people will get a good night's sleep while this case is active. Believe that. That's how powerful RICO is. RICO is the sort of charge they bring to people like El Chapo or John Gotti, right? These are serious charges. When you get slapped with a RICO case, you're really in the crosshairs of the federal government, and you know that they're going to use every tool at their disposal to bring you down. And one of the main tenets of a RICO case, one of the most powerful parts of it, is how long these sentences are for associates who are involved in these criminal organizations. So it's not some slap on the wrist for the core four, right? When they start getting wrapped up and they start getting pulled in and they see the charges that they face and their lawyers see that this is a RICO case, their lawyer, whoever their lawyer may be, is for sure going to try and cut a deal. 100%, not even a question, will try and cut a deal with the federal government to mitigate how bad the punishment is for their client by serving up bigger fish up on the hierarchy, right? Higher people on the chain of command, serving them up, bringing evidence against them, being willing to testify against them in court, etc., etc. So once you start using the RICO statute, once you start breaking that out as a prosecutor, that's like breaking out the big bazooka for the Federal Reserve and injecting $6 trillion of liquidity into the market. Right? That's the same kind of thing when RICO starts getting thrown around. That's the kind of thing that'll have everybody who has ever been involved with any sort of transaction financially or otherwise with Jeffrey Epstein literally having sleepless nights. So much so that Andy is even going to start sweating again, I'm sure. Because the word RICO getting slapped at you and being thrown at you by the federal government of the United States is by far one of the most daunting things that the government can do to you, because there are all sorts of charges when it comes to RICO. They're going to get you for a leadership role. They're going to get you for all kinds of crazy shit. And they'll bring 100, 200 counts of RICO at you. And even if just 2 or 3 of them stick, you're going to college, baby, right? You're in big trouble. And if that's the route that Denise George is going to go here, then I'll tell you what, a lot of people are going to end up going to prison. So let's jump into this article and see exactly what it says. I have not read the article yet. I just had a brief conversation with somebody on Twitter about this article, so I decided to add it to the catalog tonight. So we're going to jump into it and see just exactly what they say. But if what I hear is correct and there is talk of RICO in this article, that's a big move, man. That's a big step in the right direction. And that's the kind of thing that the survivors can rally around, because it should be RICO or bust at this point, right? I don't want no weak-ass charges on these people. I want them all caught up. I want Indike and Khan wrapped up. I want Ghislaine Maxwell wrapped up. Every single person that was helping facilitate these people being trafficked in and out of Jeffrey Epstein's locations, I want everybody involved in that slap with RICO. Every last one of them. All right, so this is from the stjohnsource.com. The headline is Justice Opposed Terms of Proposed Epstein Survivors Fund by Judy Schimmel, April 9th, 2020. Now, we talked a little bit about how they had the court ruling on Tuesday. We talked about what was going on in the courtroom. So this article might be a little bit, rehash a little bit of that, as well as give us some new information. So let's see just exactly where this journey takes us. The creation of a survivors' compensation fund from the estate of convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein still has a ways to go, according to Attorney General Denise George. George provided updates on such a fund in a statement issued by the Justice Department this week. And that's interesting, too, that the Justice Department is issuing this statement. I would think that Denise George would come out and sort of, go at this as kind of a lone wolf almost. But with the statement coming out by the Justice Department, I wonder just how closely she's working with the actual prosecution in New York as well. Maybe they're coordinating their attack here. Again, I don't know that for sure, but you would think that with both of these cases, on the burner in both court systems, that the authorities would be at the very least, conversating with each other about their strategy. You would hope so, right? The Attorney General said several details in the proposed settlement fund have improved since they were discussed in a February probate hearing in Superior Court. But the territory's top justice official says there are continued objections to one provision. Lawyers for the Epstein estate say sex abuse victims who file legitimate claims against Epstein must sign releases before receiving compensation. And again, I have a funny feeling that's a lot of Ghislaine Maxwell finessing Indike and Khan with her shots over the bow from the sun. Now, we know that Ghislaine Maxwell is a master manipulator. We know that once she gets involved with things, she's trying to form the narrative so it fits the story she's trying to tell. We know that she's not above things like that, cloak and dagger activities. We understand the stock she comes from. We understand who her father was. And we also understand that she's trying to put the screws to Indike and Khan, at least in my opinion, with those the warning shots that she gave through her mouthpiece, Laura Goldman. And we see that here as well, because this is a big sticking point, right? Why would this be such a big sticking point if Khan and Indike weren't being finessed, or they weren't being, talked to about their decision here? Who are they trying to protect at this point? Jeffrey Epstein's dead. The party should be over. But no, they're still attempting to protect people. And again, I believe that all goes back to Ghislaine Maxwell. The release prevents them from pursuing additional claims against Epstein associates who may have also inflicted abuse on them. Again, that's just straight garbage. I've said that was garbage from the jump. That's a non-starter for me. If I'm one of the lawyers for the girls, I will never, ever, ever, ever advise them to sign something like that. Now, if it's a girl who has only been abused by Jeffrey Epstein, perhaps, that might be a different situation. But if I was the lawyer of a client who had been abused by multiple people involved with Jeffrey Epstein, I wouldn't take some hush money, right? At least I would advise my client not to take the hush money, because it's important that they go after every single person who was involved. And furthermore, I would bring lawsuits against every single person who was involved, however that works out. Again, I'm not a lawyer, right? So I might be shooting for the universe here. But I would be dropping lawsuits on every single person who was involved in even facilitating the abuse. With this demand still in place, the fund cannot ensure a fundamentally fair and legally sufficient process for survivors to participate, George said. Such a broad release essentially amounts to a misuse of probate funds and an abuse of the probate process solely to protect persons who are not part of the estate. Again, these are the clues, the breadcrumbs that are so important, right? Who are they protecting and why? What would motivate the estate to protect people that are on the periphery? What would motivate them, right? And why would Ghislaine Maxwell come out and say the things that she said at the times that she would said them? You start putting the pieces of the puzzle together, and, I'm not Jacques Cousteau or anything over here, but come on. You don't need to be the world's greatest investigator to see what's going on once you have everything right in front of you and all the context there. Epstein, a New York-born financier, pedophile, was a business and property owner, pedophile, in the Virgin Islands. In June 2008, he pleaded guilty in Florida to sexually abusing a female minor, pedophile. Investigators say the extent of that abuse lasted more than a decade, involved hundreds of victims, and occurred at Epstein's properties in New York, Florida, Paris, New Mexico, and the Virgin Islands. At the time of his death, on August 10th, Epstein was in federal custody in a Manhattan jail cell on charges of sex trafficking. In the will that Epstein finalized with his lawyer on August 8th, he declared himself a resident of the Virgin Islands. Again, why would he do that, huh? Oh, because he wanted to protect his money. He thought that he had the in down there in the Virgin Islands because of all of the people who have provided cover for him there previously. And now Denise George comes along, and she's looking like she doesn't give a god dang about any of that, right? Looks like she's ready to bulldog this dude. Again, my only problem with Denise George is the financial side of it. I don't want to see the Virgin Islands go after any of this money. They shouldn't try and recoup any of this money, all right? The money's gone, okay? There's no reason for the Virgin Islands to be getting a piece of the dough that the survivors should be getting. Enough would be the notoriety that imagine the publicity for the Virgin Islands if it's her, Denise George, some backwater attorney general who goes after and seeks justice for these survivors and actually brings these people down, as opposed to the so mighty and powerful SDNY. Can you imagine what that would do for her future? Forget money. She wouldn't need any money for the Virgin Islands, right? She would have a super profile, the kind of person that's almost guaranteed to get elected to office if they want to run, and the kind of person who the country can look at and say, man, there are heroes here. There are people who truly care. Because all of these prosecutors seem like they're limp-wristed and they're scared. All of them seem like they're betas. Are there any alphas left amongst these prosecutors? Seems like Denise George is the only one that's looking to step up and put the screws to these cats. So, look, as I've said always, my problem with her has been the financial aspect. I think what she's doing on the other side of things, I think it's a very shrewd, and I think she's using the system as well as she can against some very powerful people. So if she would just, back up off of the financial BS and stop calling the Virgin Islands a victim of Jeffrey Epstein, then she'd be, top notch in my book. So let's hope she pivots away from that, like I said, and focuses more on bringing this criminal organization down. On January 15th, justice officials announced the filing of a civil lawsuit against the Epstein estate seeking compensation for the territory and for survivors who were believed to have been subject to abuse at Epstein's compound on Little St. James Cay in Pillsbury Sound. The lawsuit alleges violation of the Criminally Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, RICO, but it so far contains no criminal charges. See, this is very interesting. So she evoked RICO, but she hasn't charged anybody under the statutes yet. Now, I wonder how much this motivated Ghislaine Maxwell to open her yap and fire off some comments through the Sun. Because, again, this is the big threat. This is the nuclear bomb. This is the bazooka that a prosecutor can use. And it doesn't matter how rich or how famous or how connected you are. When it comes to RICO, because here's the thing. Look, when you follow the drugs, right? Let's just use this as an example. When you follow the drugs, well, you get led to the drug dealers, right? That's how that works. But when you follow the money in a drug case, you have no idea where the hell you're going to end up. And the same holds true with this case here with Jeffrey Epstein. If you follow the money in this case, I'm telling you right now, if there's a forensic accountant out there that is listening to this podcast, or if any of you know a forensic accountant out there, they'll tell you. They will tell you the deal. When it comes to a criminal organization like this, follow the money. That's how they get all of these guys. Very rare do they get them on murder or they get them on, any other charge. But when you use RICO, it makes it a lot easier to nail these mother effs on financial crimes, right? And at the end of the day, let me tell you what, it's a very powerful statute. So it's interesting that she has evoked it, but it doesn't contain criminal charges as of yet. By invoking local RICO statutes, justice charges Epstein and associates working with some of his enterprises with facilitating sex trafficking of women and girls in the Virgin Islands, some as young as 14. Wow. So, again, they bring this RICO charge in front of a judge and a grand jury. I'm telling you right now, if you bring a ham sandwich in front of a grand jury, you can get it indicted. If they bring this stuff in front of a grand jury with all of the evidence they have and the prosecution really believes in the case and they charge hard, we'll start seeing arrests tomorrow. The second the prosecution does that, the second it begins to really do that sort of thing, then you're going to see big trouble for these co-conspirators. If the lawsuit prevails at trial, justice officials say they want to make sure that Epstein's survivors have a chance to show up and make legal claims against the estate over a period of years, and that those whose claims are honored have funds set aside to compensate them. At the January 15th press conference announcing the lawsuit, George explained the approach is similar to those used in other cases involving multiple sexual abuse survivors. The Attorney General is asking the probate court whether they approve of the estate's demand that independently culpable third parties be released from potential culpability. The Attorney General's office will forcefully continue its work to hold accountable Epstein's criminal enterprise through the government's RICO lawsuit and send a clear message that the USVI is not and will not be a safe haven for sex traffickers or sexual abuse, George said. Wow. All right, so there you have it, folks. We're finally getting to hear a prosecutor talk a little bit about RICO. And, better late than never, right? I wish it was earlier, and I wish they were talking about RICO from the very beginning, but at least now we have it here in this article from the St. John source.com, right from Denise George's mouth, that RICO, at the very least, has been brought up. It's not something that's being forgotten about all of a sudden. They sure love to use RICO when they're knocking in drug dealers' doors in South Central Los Angeles, or when they're kicking in doors in the South Bronx. It's about time they use RICO on some of these scumbags that are amongst them, that are hidden amongst them in polite society. It's about time some of these people have all of their assets seized. It's about time they get their doors kicked in and SWAT teams roll in and pull them out of their houses. That time is long overdue, folks. And if we're talking about RICO here, like Denise George is, if we're starting to use that word and we start seeing the movement towards that, it's going to be a wrap for these people. An absolute bloodbath for these people when it comes to people being arrested, because everyone's going to get caught up. I'm telling you, if they go the RICO route and they really chase the RICO route, then it's going to be a whole serious situation, because everybody who got broke off money-wise is now implicated, because how does the government know where that money has come from? If Epstein is involved in fraud and human trafficking and all sorts of other illegal behavior, nobody could tell what the clean money is and what the dirty money is. So they're just going to seize all of that shit. And anybody who had transactions from Jeffrey Epstein, they're going to have to answer some questions. And I'm not talking about questions from reporters or independent content creators. I'm talking about real questions from investigators and interrogators who know their business. Because let's remember, folks, all right, it's not when I bash on the FBI and even like the CIA, it's not the rank and file agent that I'm talking about. I'd say most of the people in those organizations are good people, right? You know, the frontline workers, the FBI agent who's, chasing down cases every day, breaking up child sex abuse rings. Those kind of people are not where my anger is directed. My anger is directed at the bureaucrats who have been in their positions of office and they've never been elected by the people, and they work all of these black sites and they're involved in all of this disgusting, devious shit that the American people would never sanction or be okay with. And they wrap it all in a nice little shield of, oh, this is about national security. Yeah, right. Stop it. It's not about national security. It's about you increasing your power, right? Consolidation of power, like I always talk about. That's what the intelligence agencies want to do. And of course you want them dossiers, because what does information do? It helps you consolidate your power. And the most important commodity for people that work in intelligence is information. So these people who have gotten away with this for so long and for so many decades, I would love for them to all get RICO cased. I'd love for them to have RICO statutes dropped on them like they were the Sopranos. Every last one of them, as many as you can throw at them. Litigate them into the poorhouse like you do with everybody else. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at Bobbycapucci at protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All right, everybody, until tomorrow.